Okay, this is my production company, Newer Films, from London, but it's actually based in Den Haag. And we specialise in adventure, culture, environment and wildlife documentaries. Most of my clients are the BBC, National Geographic and quite recently Discovery Channel. Now I'm going to talk tonight about a very peculiar expedition that I was involved in. I was working in London and I got this SMS. It says, "Have been asked to guide a blind climber on Everest. We leave in 4 weeks. Do you want to come?" I was thinking, oh my God, 4 weeks to prepare a documentary shoot on Everest. Well, I thought, you know, here I am as a producer of adventure. Why not? Let's do it. This is some of the equipment that you need to prepare for a shoot on Everest. It's actually 120 bags. Each bag is about 30 kilos. And it had our film cameras, our tents, our ropes, our oxygen, our food. You can imagine an awful lot of equipment to get to Everest. Now, this man was from Stuttgart in Germany. He was a doctor. This was taken in Kathmandu. What was special about him, Thomas, is that at sea level he had perfect vision, but as he would go higher in altitude, he would lose his sight. And this was caused by a brain surgery that went wrong. I don't know who that is. Oh, that's me. Yeah. We were on the north face of Everest. Most people think of Everest in Nepal, but we were actually in Tibet, in China. Now, to get to Everest, the north face, you travel in little remote villages through the Tibetan countryside. This is our Dutch connection. There had to be a Dutch connection here. This is Harry. Harry was, or is rather, a mountain guide, and it was his SMS that inspired me to take part in this expedition. And he sat by a Buddhist shrine, Om Mani Padme Hum. Everest Base Camp. You think of a romantic location. There was nothing romantic about arriving here. We arrived there, in buses. But this photo is taken at 5,200 meters. So already just arriving in a bus was very, very hard. Now the next day, the weather cleared and we were left with the beautiful, iconic view of Everest in the background, the high, high mountain. 5,200 meters. It was very hard to breathe at base camp, but luckily we had about 2 weeks to acclimatize. Now, if those of you that are familiar with Buddhist cultures, it's very important to do a blessing before you do any expedition. And this is called a puja ceremony. Basically, everything that we used on the expedition was blessed. Our ropes, our ice axes, everything. And it would turn out that we would need this blessing. This photo is a very powerful photo for me because 2 people in this image that you're seeing didn't come back and their bodies are still on Everest. So, although we needed that blessing, it didn't work. This is me wearing the latest towel on my head. You can buy that towel in Beaversport if you wanted. It's ideal for blocking off those ultraviolet rays. But this photo was taken at about 6,000 meters. And at that point, I didn't feel so good. 6,000 meters is pretty high. The oxygen is very, very hard to breathe. If you have a phobia with heights, this is not the place to go. These ladders were luckily placed by our climbing Sherpas, but even so, you know, we don't want to be falling in crevasses, especially when you're wearing spikes on your boots. Probably that crevasse was probably about 100 meters. Now this is when it starts to get hard. This trail of people that snake all the way up to the top is called the North Col. It takes about 14 hours to walk about 1 kilometer of vertical height. You're walking literally like this. And then you reach the North Col campsite. This is 6,200 meters. In the distance, you can see the summit of Everest. That's about another 3-4 days away. So that's a long way away, bearing in mind you're going very, very slowly. At this point, we needed oxygen. I think this photo is now 6,900 meters, and we're wearing oxygen. Now, oxygen is there really to stop you getting frostbite. That's the main reason why we use bottled oxygen. It's also a good commercial for the North Face tent. This photo was published in National Geographic magazine, so we were quite happy with this photo, and so are our sponsors, actually. This is Thomas on the left, wearing the latest in oxygen masks, and of course, Pemba, being Nepali, doesn't need oxygen. This is about as hard as it gets on Everest. Most people in this room could probably do this. It's about 30 meters of rock climbing. The problem is it's at about 8,300 meters above sea level, and everything you do is a massive, massive attempt. I love this photo. Tomorrow I'm flying to London at an altitude of about 23,000 feet. That's probably where the clouds are in this photo. This is just below the summit. Some bottled oxygen at the top and our fixed lines that we clip into. Now, this is the iconic photo that most people think of on Everest. Of course, Everest was actually at the sea bottom. And as we climbed Everest, we noticed loads of little fish and shells, things that were once at the bottom of the sea. But I'm saving the most important photo for last. This is the summit of the North Face in Everest. Remember I told you about the photo that 2 of the people in the photo had died? Well, unfortunately, one of the people that died was Thomas, the man that we set out to film. And he died just below the top. And that's where he still lies.